And what's up, everybody? It is the Dark Conservatarian. Yes, I know that I am horribly late for this episode of Strike Force, but note to self, do not decide to go and pick up and eat dinner in between work and setting up and going live on one of these Strike Force news streams. So that was kind of foolish and a big mistake on my part, but here I am with y'all. So hello, how are y'all doing? And I just heard a guest jump in. What's up, Loudmouth?
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. Probably can't stay long, but what's up?
The subjects of today's episode of Strike Force is talking about the Israel versus Hamas situation that is happening within the recent couple of weeks. I'm kind of late on it, but I had I wanted to present some little factoids, up in front on my own show, and not to mention respond to a blog post that was shared to me kind of in relation to it. And also the next subject is going to be about the Hill admitting that coronavirus may have well likely come from a Chinese lab. And also the next subject is going to be about the Hill admitting that coronavirus may have well likely come from a Chinese lab. I was hearing the reverb right there, by the way.
Sorry. Yeah. I figured that it did.
Right. I wasn't too skeptical about it, but what I definitely known about was that the Chinese were trying to cover up their own tracks, trying to cover up their own faults in the whole ordeal by suppressing reporters and all that stuff. I'd read that like months ago, but I'd never known for absolute certain that it was that it came from a lab in China. But
almost like the Chinese Communist Party is acting like they have something to hide.
Indeed. Hello, Reckless Trucker in the live chat, and JC Armitage as well. I stand with Israel, says Reckless Trucker. Also, what was that Irish song? It was Wolf Blood by Adrian von Ziegler. It's a Celtic song that I decided to incorporate into the intro of my news streams nowadays, ever since I got copyright claimed for playing Lonely Wolf's cover of Nights in White Satin by the Moody Blues. Wah wah. Sorry, Lonely Wolf, but anyway. So, actually, before I get into the news, I just want to tell everybody that this show, that Strike Force, is presented to you by patrons like you. I almost said Lonely Wolf. No, Lonely Wolf is not a patron. Michaela Stray Cat, Cat Chat, and the Conundrum being the current ones, and I still gotta iron out the details and advantages of becoming a patron of the Dark Conservatarian. But if you are at all interested in becoming a patron yourself, donating money, well then there is the link down below. A couple of advantages that I would definitely include in is, one, an immediate invite into my Discord server, even if you donate just $1 a month. And if you're a higher paying patron, then consideration for a news article or a video that you want me to feature here on the news streams. And if you're an even higher dollar patron, then consideration for an edited response video to whatever video that you would like me to do. Reckless Chucker says booty pics. I'm sorry, Reckless, but nobody wants to see my hairy ass, so no thank you. But anyway, so get on with the first subject of the day. So you all have been hearing, unless you have been living under a rock, you all have heard about the most recent Palestinian versus Israel conflict that has been going on through beginning of May. It was kind of boiling over or building up at late parts of April. First, because of evictions that were done by Israeli landlords on Palestinian heritage people living within the Jerusalem province of Sheikh, Jarrah, I think was what the neighborhood was called, as that is what the typical narrative is being explained by both people on the left and right. And what was presented to me was this little blog post by peterloud.co.uk/Palestine. The beginning title is Maps of Palestine and the Atrocities by Israel. 50 years of occupation, quote unquote. So obviously a heavily anti-Israel website, and I was just wanting to respond to this. I haven't got through the entire article, but the first headliner was talking about the most recent conflict. And if we go reading into it a little bit, the Israelis are having another phase of atrocities. The present problem started because Israel has decided to force Palestinians living in Jerusalem out of their homes so that Israelis can have them. The Palestinians in Jerusalem protest. Okay, I just want to say that last part right there, as so Israelis can have them specifically. I mean, is there really confirmation of that there was that specific intent, or was it just that Palestinians were not paying their rent? Was one of the biggest questions that was rolling through my head when I first read this. The Palestinians in Jerusalem protested, so the Israeli military came out in force against the protesters. Soon 3 Palestinians were killed. After those killings, Hamas fired some rockets in Israel. And what I hear is that some of those Palestinians that died in the protests or the riots, whatever, was a couple of people were actually trying to fight against the Israeli I think it was the IDF that they sent, not technically the Israeli police, which you can like raise questions all you want about them having like a literal military police force in Israel, but nonetheless, there is that intent as to what was behind the 3, or at least 2 of the 3 Palestinians that were killed. In spite of reportedly hundreds of rockets being fired, only 3 Israelis were reported killed. Israel responded by sending bomber aircraft into Gaza to kill Palestinians. Yesterday, the Israelis killed 9 children and 13 adults in Gaza. At the moment, news reports say that 38 Palestinians have been killed by the Israelis and 3 Israelis killed. How many more Palestinians will the Israelis kill? Friday, 14th May 2021, this morning I read in The Guardian that 8 Israelis have been killed and 119 Palestinians have been killed. That isn't enough to satisfy the Israelis. The Israeli military are reported as massing on border and shelling Palestinians in their homes before they get down to the serious job of killing Palestinians. It is simple to see who are the evil terrorists, who are the goodies, and who are the baddies. Not exactly, because because I do not think that reading the rest of it is that necessary. You can read it yourself. I will have it linked down in the description box below after going off air. But essentially, it is not that clear because I had this stinking fishy sensation that this blog post was omitting some facts about the whole conflict. So, because I had already heard beforehand about how one of the reasons as to why they were being evicted was because they were not paying rent. And lo and behold, as I've gone reading from National Review here, and y'all can have your questionable or your opinions questioning the credibility of National Review all you want, but I had read 2 other articles that were cited by Wikipedia that were going against the Israelis about the whole eviction story and whatnot, and they were not explaining any fact or reasoning as to why that they were evicted. But National Review here nonetheless goes explaining as to why that is, and I have not heard anything in counter to it. But essentially, yes, they were refusing up to 50 years, some of the residents, on paying their own rent. So
50 years? They didn't pay any rent in 50 years.
Some long amount of time like that.
Shit. I need to find a landlord who's that lenient.
At least that's
don't worry, I'll pay it. I'll pay it after I'm dead. So it's cool.
Right. It might not be all the Palestinians, but it's just one of the little excerpts that were pointed out in National Review. I have already pre-read this article myself, but yeah, essentially, it is reasonable cause as to why to be evicting somebody. I mean, the only reasoning as to why that you would think that violent retaliation, and that is the reasoning as to why that Hamas has decided to attack Israel, is that they're exploiting this incident right here of Palestinians being evicted from their homes within the Jerusalem neighborhood of Sheikh, Jarrah. They're exploiting that as reasoning to be attacking Israel. Now, unless you are a full-blown commie who believes that housing is a right, and if you're renting out your piece of property to somebody else to live in, you think that that person living there actually has a right to that, and you don't have right to like deny them that residence. Unless you're of that mindset, then it stands to reason that violent retaliation is not the right type of retaliation just because somebody goes kicking you out of their own privately owned property, that being the rental home in the case of landlords. So, yeah, it's just overblown retaliation, unnecessary completely. In the mindset of a capitalist, as most of my fan base is. Even the more anti-Israel capitalists and right-wingers within my website, or excuse me, within my fan base would at least agree that it's unnecessary by Hamas to be sending in rockets, shooting rockets at Israel just because you had like your cousin who lives within the Israeli borders got evicted from their home or whatever. But what was happening in the middle of the attacks? I mean, as per usual, as explained by the Toronto Sun right here, human shields. Like, this original blog post goes talking about the high death count of Palestinians as compared to Israelis. And it's not too surprising because Israelis have a more higher tech and more advanced defense mechanism, that being, of course, the Iron Dome, an anti-missile sort of defense system that will shoot down any incoming cruise missile or any other type of missile, or even mortars, I think, for that matter as well. So it's not too surprising. And as to why that the Israeli body count would be so low. And as far as the high body count of Palestinians, first question I gotta ask is how many of those people were soldiers or recruits of Hamas in general? And secondly, my second question was how many of them were used as human shields? I mean,
that's exactly the point. Probably most of them. We know Hamas uses them as human shields.
Right.
Yeah, there's an old canard that is 100% accurate. Israel uses their weapons to protect their people, whereas Hamas uses their people to protect their weapons.
I think I came across the title of that website in my research of today for today's episode. But yeah, as confirmed by Toronto Sun, it's the typical same old Hamas is using human shields. And it is a pity that any civilian would be dying within this conflict right here, be it Palestinian or Israeli. But ultimately, if I was like an official that was leading Israel or some military guy, I would be asking myself the question of, would I rather that... I don't know. I had a better way.
They have to put their country first and their people's lives first. They have to.
Right. As much as I would
That's the first duty of the military of any nation.
Right. I had a better way of putting it. Well, okay, not better than you necessarily, Loudmouth. I'm not meaning to disparage or anything, but I had a better way of putting it than I was about to put it at some point, but I forgot how to frame it. But yeah, essentially, duty to your own citizens first. Not that you should be intentionally killing other people's citizens, but the protection of your own citizens should come over the protection of other people's citizens, especially if other countries' citizens are, in this case, being used as human shields. It is a sad bit of collateral damage. Either I can let my own citizens get killed by the enemy, or I can put up with the necessary evil of collateral damage on the opposite end.
Which is the moral choice that Hamas is forcing on Israel.
Right.
And another thing is Hamas, the Palestinians were complaining that they didn't have the resources and money necessary to vaccinate their population against the CCP virus, yet they apparently had plenty of money to buy hundreds of rockets.
Yep. Don't you know that priorities are a thing that war criminals do not know how to get right?
Yeah. Yeah, may have been a better idea to use that cash towards vaccinating your population, but that's just my opinion. Who am I to judge?
JC Armitage asks, who owns the property in question, the government of Israel or some Palestinian people? Because if it's the former, then that property claim is illegitimate because the state used theft to obtain and maintain said property. It wasn't clarified as to whether or not it was publicly owned property or privately owned property, as far as the rental homes that the Sheikh Jarrah residents were evicted from. Reckless Trucker says it was private property that wanted to rent it. The Israeli owners had bills of sale and property deeds. All right. Unfortunately, that was a little detail that was not fully explained in National Review, so yeah. By the way, Reckless Trucker, there in the live chat, I sent the link out in the Strikeforce News group chat and also the Twitter group chat. Don't know if you're able to join or not. Otherwise, we appreciate you being in the live chat. But anyway, to sort of move on from that subject, or I guess there is a little bit more. I will read more into the general story as far as Israel versus Palestine conflict goes. But for right now, I think it is quite questionable, the narrative that leftists, as I'm using that as a catch-all, have to put forth as far as Palestine are the good guys and Israel are the bad guys. It seems very, very questionable.
There's the understatement of the century.
Right. Borderline slanderous, loudmouth, or would that be a better way of putting it, in your opinion?
Yeah, pretty much complete bullshit.
All right.
In terms of leftists, particularly so many YouTube leftist connections with Hamas, I highly recommend Short Fatted Taco's latest video. He goes through about how some lefties on YouTube actually were doing like a charity stream to raise money for this charity, this Canada-based charity, and apparently that charity was funneling money to Hamas. Yes.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, watch Short Fatted Taco. He he brings the receipts, and he brings loads of evidence for that assertion. It's a really good video.
Allow me to search it up and save it for later.
Yeah.
Right. That's a guy that PSA Sitch recommends and points out in the live chats a whole lot. Lancing a Boil, the Israel-Palestine shit show. Is that the video that you're talking about?
I think it is.
All right, I'm gonna.
Hey guys.
Nope. Save that for later. Anyway, to sort of get on with the next subject, though. So this was very recent, and it popped up in the algorithm for me in my recommendations. Funnily enough, this story by The Hill. Saagar and Enjeti, new details reveal Fauci media cover-up of lab leak hypothesis. Now, I'm not going to make us watch through the entire video because it is 10 minutes long and it is kind of a little bit heavy in the dialogue and details. I don't know. I don't know what the proper term is, but you'll just have to watch it yourself after this live stream. But essentially, The Hill themselves, not some right-wing kook conspiracy theorist website. The Hill, centrist, center-left, kind of mainstream-ish media outlet, admitting to this thing that a whole lot of other right-wingers were saying from the get-go. Now, I did not fully doubt that theory, as I said a little bit earlier in this live stream, and I, in fact, admitted that, and read, for that matter, that China was trying to cover up their own tracks as far as responsibility, whatever the responsibility might have been in regards to coronavirus. But now I have pretty much the confirmation. If you have even center leftists like Saagar and Enjeti admitting to this.
Really though, why does being center left make you support genuine fascist state? Because let's be honest, the Chinese Communist Party is essentially more fascist than it is communist.
Right. Wait, are you suspecting that The Hill supports China? Or am I
No,
getting
I'm
you
not
wrong?
saying about the Hill. I'm saying, why does the left constantly try to jump to China's defense? It's been ever since the virus leak. I've seen them do it over and over again, and it's really disgusting. I mean, I never was saying the lab leak hypothesis. Even to this day, I'm not 100% certain it's true. But the way they would dismiss it as a baseless conspiracy theory with no investigation into whether it's true or not, to try to cover up for China, was really disgusting.
Right. And Reckless Trucker says in the live chat, The Hill, half the hosts are full-blown leftists. Right? I mean, the website itself that goes posting all the reading articles, all the reading material, they are a little bit more, even-handed with their reporting. Saagar, Enjeti, and the People on the Hill YouTube channel, I go hearing generally from other people's opinions anyways, that they're a little bit more open with their own leftism in their own reporting. But even in here, they had to come to the admission that it came from a Chinese lab that was researching on what's the term?
Gain of function.
Gain of function. Yeah, I always keep on forgetting that term.
Yeah, they were researching on how to develop bioweapons. And American taxpayer dollars were apparently helping this lab in Wuhan, China.
Wait, I thought
in the heart of communist China.
Yeah, I mean, that's another fact that they go admitting, is that there was some funding, some billions of dollars that was coming from the United States to help research this. And Fauci, they also mentioned some other guy, I can't remember the other guy's name, but they said one or the other or both, Fauci and the other guy, were trying to like circumvent some or exploit some loophole within the law of the United States in order for them to get that money funneled over to the Chinese lab. And they're working on another billion.
It was that the current U.S. law forbidded the funding from going to that lab unless the medical director, aka Fauci, chose to override it, which he did.
Oh, damn. So the CDC director has a whole lot of power within that position.
Yes.
Wow.
To send billions in taxpayer, well, maybe not billions, maybe millions in taxpayer dollars to communist China to help them build bioweapons.
Yeah, and Saagar Enjeti, he's not even coming at this from the point of view of a China hatred sort of point of view. He's coming at this from a how that we are like funding money into this, and he goes looking at the perspective of it's because of the fact that they're researching on this as to why that the world is in the current situation that it is, and he doesn't want any future situations like that in general to happen.
Also claims that the first infections of this virus were at the Wuhan wet markets was a lie. The first infections from this virus were workers in that lab.
Yeah, that's another little feature that is mentioned by the Hill, is that they do not know, they cannot trace specifically which individual person or animal, as the narrative was some of the time, as to where it came from, on that front anyways, and that it's more suspected to be from a lab.
So wasn't Mickey Mouse fucking a bat?
No, it was not Loudmouth. I know.
Yeah, it's a bat. It's a mouse with wings.
I know how you have a hard hate boner for Mickey Mouse, but you're not going to be able to get away with dragging Mickey's name through the mud. Not this time, at least, Loudmouth. But anyway, so yeah, essentially, I guess in summation of this little story, knowing this little factoid, I think a heavy investigation, well, more than what is already revealed to us anyways, but investigate even more into the findings of Fauci's associations with this Chinese lab and what is the fuller extent that he had done. And he needs to be locked up, as far as I'm concerned, for the rest of his life, for the pain that he has basically enabled onto the entire world for researching and letting this virus out.
Well, I won't say Fauci let the virus out or that he intended that. Probably not. But he definitely has some, as you say, Spaining to do.
Yeah, I mean, go on.
This virus has killed 500,000 Americans. Half a million.
Yep. At least according to the official data, everybody.
And who knows how many in China. We don't have any accurate data because the Chinese Communist Party has been lying about the death count from the beginning.
Right. Who let the coof out? Who, says the Red Feather. Who let the coof out? Who? I guess it's supposed to be a play on the who let the dogs out.
I mean, we could still blame the CCP even if the virus didn't leak from a lab, because we know damn well that they also prevented doctors in the region from warning the populace about a spreading virus. And now I think we know why they did that.
Right. everything against the quote-unquote narrative as a conspiracy theorist. Rolls eyes, says Red Feather. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, what have you, have probably banned several people for claiming that the virus leaked from a lab. Now we have because they were quote unquote spreading misinformation, and by spreading misinformation they mean contradicting the lies of the Chinese Communist Party.
Right. Anyway, so I think I think we're good on that subject. So actually, I don't know if I don't know. Seems kind of out of left field here, but those are the two main subjects of today's episode that I wanted to present to you all, guys. There is no particular narrative for the rest of today's episode of Strike Force. It's just random bits that I've been holding in reserve until a later date, until now on some of these cases anyways. But there's this one video that I had been saving for a while in my future projects folder. Man fatally shot by police after he refuses to hand officers his gun. And I guess the only bit of relation of bringing up this story is that I just released a few hours earlier, or 1.5 hours earlier, a video talking about as to how that I'm against police brutality, which saying that here live on air seems like a petty virtue signal to y'all.
You're against police brutality? Wow, man.
But unfortunately, I had got in arguments with some people, or at least one person anyways, that was almost implying that I defend the police in all their cases of being violent against citizens. So it just frustrated me, and so I made that video, and this is kind of in relation to that. I just wanted to look at another anecdote of police being violent.
You can win, Doc. If you start to make sense, they'll simply argue against something you're not saying.
Yeah. Wait, you can't win, Doc? Is that what you said?
Dark. A parody of a Star Wars quote. You can't win, Doc.
Oh.
Yes.
You were quoting Obi-Wan. Okay.
Yeah. They'll simply start arguing against something you're not saying.
Indeed. So I guess just to present a little not so fun anecdote to y'all. Here we go.
An Anne Arundel County man is dead after officers say he refused to give up his gun to police.
Officers shot and killed him at his home this morning, where they were attempting to enforce the new red flag law.
WJC is live near the scene in Ferndale. Kimberly Eaton is updating this developing situation. Kimberly.
And Vic, police just left this Ferndale neighborhood now nearly 12 hours after officers first showed up here to attempt to remove guns from a home and ended up shooting and killing the gun owner. Flashing red and blue lights cut through the rain in this Ferndale neighborhood Monday afternoon. Police now guarding the street where their attempt to enforce the new red flag law turned fatal hours earlier. Around 5:15 in the morning, Anne Arundel County police say they came to a home on Linwood Avenue near Broadview Boulevard to take weapons from 60-year-old Gary Willis. They say 2 officers knocked on the door and Willis answered, armed with a handgun. Sergeant Jacqueline Davis says at first he put the gun down and stepped outside to talk with police.
He was fine with the officers until they told him, hey, we're serving you with this order, and this order orders us from the court to take your guns.
At that point, she says Willis went for his gun. One of the officers tried to grab it out of his hand, and Willis pulled the trigger. That bullet didn't hit anyone, but it prompted the other officer to open fire, shooting and killing the gun owner. It's a deadly beginning to a law that's barely a month old and that Anne Arundel County police have only had to enforce 9 times so far, following court orders to remove guns from owners who reportedly may be a danger to themselves or others.
These are particularly dangerous because not only do we know there's weapons involved, we're also taking the weapons.
In this case, it led to gunfire before dawn on this otherwise quiet street. Justin Ralston moved in down the block a year ago, now surprised to see a full-on investigation where neighbors tell him crime just doesn't happen.
He's lived for I don't know how many, 20-some years. He's never had anything stolen, you know. It's just quiet neighborhood and everything.
And under the law, family police, a list of people really can ask for the protective order to remove weapons. But in this case, it's not clear who petitioned the court. For now, reporting live in Anne Arundel County, I'm Kimberly Eaton for WJZ.
No, thank you. The dangers of red flag laws, y'all. And so I just wanted to present that as another anecdote that I had been knowing for a little bit, and kind of reminded myself as well, of police being in the wrong. But not because of it being part of their duty, but because they're, like, it's for their department duty, I guess you could say, because the law is in place and they are put forth to enforce the law. But they're against their own oath. They're in the wrong, not just ethically, but also constitutionally as well. Not just because that the Second Amendment says the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed, but also according to the Maryland, as I just searched it up as we were watching that video, Maryland police oath. I blank do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland and support the Constitution and enforce the laws thereof, and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment, diligently and faithfully, without so it's a little bit of a longer one. It does say technically Rockville, Maryland, so I do not know if they have exactly the same oath. Faithfully, without partiality or prejudice, execute the office of police officer of the city of Rockville according to the Constitution and laws of this state. So, I don't know if everywhere in Maryland they have the same oath, but that's at least the oath in Rockville anyways. And if we were to look at the okay, so see you later, loudmouth. He had just left us right now. But yeah. So, looking at this, fuck red flag legislation, says JC Armitage. Indeed. When is this story from, asks Red Feather. The video was from November 5th, 2018. Yeah, that's the time, Red Feather. And so, it's another example of police being in the wrong, and excuse me, I cannot really say anything too extreme here on air, but I think you guys might be able to take a guess as to what my thought is. Disclaimer, the Dark Conservatarian YouTube channel and Strikeforce News Show do not condone violence against anyone of any particular group. Fucking disgusting, says Moonbase Radio. Indeed. It should not have happened constitutionally, ethically, or morally. Legislatively, technically, they were apparently within their jurisdiction, but who makes an appeal to law fallacy? And not to say that I'm making an appeal to law fallacy with by saying the Constitution says it, bruh, but it's just saying that they're sworn to the Constitution and uphold the Constitution as it presents now. The Constitution still guarantees or says that you have the right to keep and bear arms. So, yeah. I just wanted to put forth that context as to how they're in the wrong. They're in the wrong not for the fact alone of being enforcers of the law, but because they went against their own oath originally. And hello, Techno, in the live chat. So moving on to next story. This is from Washington Examiner. A black man vandalized a New York City synagogue. CBS tried to make it about Trump. Yeah, like I said a little bit earlier, I'm gonna be sort of all over the place with these stories, y'all. My absolute favorite moment of the Trump years is when he said during a speech in 2018, "What you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening." Very dumb liberals such as Jeff Greenfield compared it to something from George Orwell's 1984 when it was actually the truest and most insightful thing Donald Trump had said. What the media say is happening is routinely and literally not what's really happening. CBS on Monday reported that 29-year-old Jordan Burnett had been arrested in New York and charged with multiple crimes, including the vandalism of several synagogues. Burnett is black. That's not really surprising because this is the kind of thing that's been happening in New York for decades. It's how Al Sharpton launched his storied career as a race-baiting anti-Semite. That's right. Before he made his money shaking down random white people, Sharpton spent his time harassing Jews and inciting riots against their businesses. And yet, the author of the CBS report dutifully added the required context that any and all hate crimes, real or fake, most are fake, are a product of Trump. Some Jewish leaders said the growth of anti-Semitic crimes intensified under former President Trump's administration. Here's the problem, though, is that what basis did CBS have beforehand anyways? Like, you can go ahead and say supposedly that anti-Semitic crimes increased under Trump, but by who would be the one question. And if you want to pull some kind of guilt by association or generalization stereotype, I don't know, fallacy for lack of better wording, to try and justify your accusation that's because of Trump, the person who did this crime would at least have to be white or some other race in order to justify such generalization. Because here's the problem. Black people, generally speaking anyways, like 80, 90%, something like that, at least according to voting data anyways, are not Republicans. So, because of the fact alone that the suspect was black, you were really hard pressed to have any sort of evidence or even guesstimation as to what the motive is or who exactly it was that did this crime. Possibly it could have been a black Trump supporter, but what was the evidence right then? I mean, even if the person was white, you would still have to be able to prove that the white guy was a Trump supporter anyways, in order to even somewhat get away with such a guess, with such a out of your ass sort of guess. Even then, it's not necessarily because Trump was condoning this sort of shit. I mean, that would be the one thing above all that would justify CBS's reporting and claim right here. Is if Trump was condoning, burn synagogues or whatever. That would be the ultimate piece of evidence. But you didn't have that, so you're going off the guess of anti-Semitic crimes on the rise in the country. And I mean, there are other sources of anti-Semitism other than just Trump, at least allegedly, if we were to go along with the logic that Trump is supposedly an anti-Semite of some sorts. But yeah. Continuing on. The online article also cited the ridiculous report by the Anti-Defamation League alleging that 2020 marked the third highest year for incidents against American Jews. The ADL considers the phrase America First to be white propaganda, quote unquote. It says America First, not whites first, you idiotic douchebag. If that tells you anything about the reliability of those numbers. Yeah, precisely. I mean, not very reliable right off the start if you're, okay. I know what I just said there of it saying America First, not just white propaganda or whites first or whatever. But unfortunately, America First does have the stain of being associated with Nick Fuentes and the Groypers. But even then, I would not go so far to say that anybody who goes off of the phrase or the belief of America First is inherently some kind of racist against people who are not white. In any event, there is nothing to indicate that Burnett's alleged crimes had anything to do with Trump or politics at all. Indeed, but the narrative hammered down in and day out is that Trump is the root of all racism. Our tireless media are here to tell us all about it, without any critical thinking involved, just as they are here to pretend that the anti-Asian hate crimes of recent months are being committed by white supremacists. They know it's a lie, and they keep telling it over and over. End of article. And that's not to say that all of the increases in anti-Asian crimes is not because of white supremacists. I mean, a few of them very damn well could be, but I don't know. I haven't looked into the data myself, honestly. But at least allegedly, the increase is actually coming from black people at a higher percentage than any other race. I mean, if we were to just be talking about the stats, it's something I would have to look into. I'm not going to stake my claim into that. And if somebody's going to be calling me racist or whatever for putting that out there, well, I'm sorry. I'm not meaning to, like, put out the idea that black people are just generally hateful towards Asians or whatever. That's not my intent. I'm just meaning to put out the possibility that the stats might say otherwise, of it supposedly being white people who are doing all this anti-Asian hate crimes. Liberty first, says Techno 1200. Indeed. I mean, I'm a proud patriot myself, but liberty does come first even above America. If America still was to be dissolved, I would still be advocating for private property rights, gun rights, and, all the other stuff that falls under libertarianism. Red flag laws, I will not comply, says Reckless Trucker about the last story. Indeed. I'm noticing a bit of a buffering issue with my live stream here. I wonder if it would help if I, like, close down some tabs here. Damn it. Hopefully that helped with things somewhat. I don't know why it's starting to, like, go out on me. I mean, I am hardlined. Let's see. Alright, OBS shows that I'm in the green again. Continuing on, catching up more in the live chat. Dude, Trump never said a bad thing about Israel, says Moonbase Israel. Precisely. I agree, Moonbase Radio. No one in the live chat. Hello there, no one. This reminds me of what happened in New Orleans shortly after Katrina, where police were knocking on doors of law-abiding citizens and taking their weapons. I did hear of that. That's something that I would have to look more into. Because if Bush or maybe it wasn't Bush, maybe it might have been the Louisiana governor at the time, but if somebody was calling out for the confiscation of guns within Louisiana, well, then that is pretty freaking disgusting, and it's something that is not talked about enough on the right, it almost seems. Sharpton is an anti-Semite. Never knew that one, actually. Makes me hate his race hustling ass even more, to be honest, says JC Armitage. Yep. Reckless Trucker says, racism didn't exist before Trump, except when it did, which makes all of America racist, and therefore Trump racist, but not Joe Biden. His support of racist crime bill and drug war isn't racist. And Red Feather is saying LMAO, Reckless Trucker. Trump moved the American embassy to Israel, for fuck's sake. Right. JC Armitage says, so I'm not the only one with the occasional buffering issues. Let me check the connection again. I'm still in the green, so that's good. Moon-based. Reckless Trucker says moon-based Israel. Oh, well, like the opposite of Naziplosion. Naziplosion with moon Nazis? Naziplosion? Is that really a thing? Shit. I think I had another hiccup in the connection right there on OBS. Don't know what to do about that. Alright, so continuing on with the next story before I completely lose connection. GOP finds success with anti-woke agenda. I had this article saved for a little bit, and I thought it might be a little bit of an interesting read to get into. So let's start reading it. Actually, it's kind of a lengthy one. But I'm only like 49 minutes into this live stream, so it's said like exploration, says Reckless Trucker. Okay. Anyway, as Republicans grapple with the future of their party in the post-Trump landscape, the issue appears to be animating GOP officials and voters across the right opposing so-called wokeness. Excuse me. Pushing back against the perceived cultural overreaches of the left has become a calling card for candidates from the local level to those eyeing the White House. With the midterm elections more than a year away, many Republican level to those eyeing the White House. With the midterm elections more than a year away, many Republicans have not yet honed the precise message they will feature in ads and on the campaign trail when their races get underway in earnest. But standing up to liberal pieties on issues of race and identity has already started to bear fruit for some Republicans. A slate of candidates for local offices in the Dallas suburb of Southlake won with an overwhelming share of the vote in an election on Saturday after campaigning on a platform to block instruction of critical race theory in classrooms. Oh, Reckless Trucker says exploitation. I spelt it wrong. Okay, I got you. Curriculum as racist. The pop star Demi Lovato had even condemned local resistance to the racial teaching requirements as horrifying and accused parents who oppose the teaching as literally fighting to uphold white supremacy. Oh, jeez. Who's Demi Lovato again? Is Demi Lovato like a actress or a pop singer or something? I forget. Yeah, because people go disdaining the idea of actively wanting people to see color in order to fight racism is a totally white supremacist. The idea that you would want people to be colorblind is white supremacy, apparently. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Wokeness is no longer about challenging the system. Wokeness is the system. Vivek Ramaswamy, an entrepreneur and author of the forthcoming book Woke Inc., told the Washington Examiner that creates an opportunity for a new movement of rebels relative to the new power structures of wokeness. Ramaswamy said big business is a major driver of a woke worldview that sees everything through the lens of race. There's two phenomena. One is the underlying content of wokeness itself, and two is the method of which wokeness spreads, most notably woke capitalism, he said. The first of them is this new idea that your identity is composed of your genetically inherited attributes, your race, your gender, and your sexual orientation. Quote-unquote woke capitalism. You know, that kind of reminds me of the Lauren Southern video that both My Two Cents and Night Shift 10,000 responded to Lauren Southern's video. Lauren Southern's video talking about how capitalism has destroyed social conservatism. That's because of capitalism why the right is losing the culture war, or whatever exactly it is. A handful of corporations drew GOP ire last month when they spoke out against a voting reform law in Georgia based on a misleading Democratic portrait of the law as Jim Crow 2.0. Delta and Coca-Cola were among the Georgia-based companies that waded into the fray only to be faced with a backlash. Major League Baseball sparked the biggest wave of outrage, however, when it moved its forthcoming All-Star game from Atlanta to Denver in a concession to liberal pressure that inflicted economic harm on Atlanta businesses. Republicans eager to gain favor with voters quickly slammed the MLB's decision. In the Ohio Senate primary, for example, candidates vying for the GOP nomination rushed to outdo each other's condemnation of wokeness. It's sad that Major League Baseball folded to the woke cancel culture of today's Socialist Democratic Party and radical left's demands, Josh Mandel, former Ohio treasurer and Senate primary candidate, said. MLB's virtue signaling caused Georgia families and small businesses to lose millions over their woke boycott. President Trump is right. Cancel culture is seeking into every aspect of our lives, including sports, and we must take a stand, said Jane Timken, former Ohio State Party chairwoman and another GOP candidate for Senate. Techno 1200 says, Lauren Southern has clearly embraced the IQ of her hair color. Nice one, Techno. I love it. Mike Gibbons, another Republican Senate candidate and investment banker, attempted to get a refund on his MLB season tickets following the incident, later telling the Cincinnati Enquirer he planned to boycott the league because I think we ought to get the politics out of our daily life. Yeah, I mean, I would like a break from politics every now and again. And I could go on about how it's not just the left politicizing my daily life that makes me unwanting of that sort of stuff. And now there is actually one particular person on the right that is almost politicizing every single time I interact with them instead of trying to put politics aside for the moment. But that's getting to personal territory, and I'm just not going to reveal it. While wokeness helped fuel unprecedented gains in the U.S. House by Republicans in the 2020 elections, you ain't seen nothing yet, said Mark Serrano, a Republican strategist. The left will always overreach in their zeal for more power, but just like in 2016, they're disregarding the interests of hard-working Americans in favor of woke extremism, including massive tax increases on the middle class, open borders. While tax increases on the middle class is not exactly wokeism, I'm just going to put that forth, Serrano. And as far as open borders go, that's not wokeness inherently either. Defunding police, that is not inherently based off of wokeness either. The idea that police are systemically and always racist, no matter what the story and context of the story might be, that can be pretty woke. But the idea of thinking that the police are too corrupt and overreaching in power and so therefore defund them, that's not woke. I mean, let's be real, Mr. Serrano. Climate fanaticism, as much as I dislike Greta Thunberg's rhetoric as far as climate change goes, I don't think it's based off of necessarily anything that is woke-like. And destabilizing energy policies that are hitting the pocketbooks of everyday citizens, Serrano said. Serrano, no offense, but either you're dumb or you're just being a grifter right now. Come on. I mean, I'm not going to say that every single Republican in office that is trying to exploit the anti-woke trend that is going on nowadays, that is in place of the anti-SJW trend back in 2016. I'm not going to say that every single Republican that is exploiting this is a grifter, and say that every single one of them does not believe in their anti-woke messaging and whatnot. But Mark Serrano here specifically almost seems to be coming off as a bit of a grifter with his anti-wokeism. Like, come on, let's be real, Mark Serrano. Not everything that the left does is based off of wokeism. Polling has shown some of the leftist proposals most closely associated with wokeness aren't widely popular. A USA Today Ipsos poll from March found just 18% of people in the United States support defunding the police. Well, never mind. I was going to go on a different point, but my mistake. While opinion breaks down along party lines, a recent Marist NPR PBS poll found that the majority of voters, 56% of them, oppose sports teams or leagues using their public platform to advocate for social or political change. 58% of all voters said they oppose corporations using their platforms to advocate for social causes. Okay. Lauren Southern was never that smart or anything, just kind of hot, so the Sims made her algorithm friendly. Right? I guess so, Reckless Trucker. If they go against the wokeness, it's not grifting, it's learning to represent the base. I'm not going to say, well, like I said, not every single Republican that is riding the anti-woke wave is like a grifter. It's just Mark Serrano specifically who seems to be, I don't know. He some of his stuff that he's saying is too ridiculous to where that I gotta question whether he believes it or not. And that's what I believe, what am I trying to say? And that's what I believe the definition of grifting to be, is if you are saying stuff that you don't believe just for the sake of monetary, political gain, or any other sort of gain like that. Even some Democrats have begun to acknowledge the potential problem that liberal activists could create for candidates attempting to run in suburban or swing districts. James Carville, a veteran Democratic strategist, said in an interview with Vox last month that wokeness is a problem for the party. It's a real phenomenon, and it's damaging to the party brand, Carville said of the social justice jargon he labeled a product of faculty lounge politics. A guy named Dor in the live chat, free Palestine from Hamas. Well, I don't care if Palestine gets their freedom or not, but I think they should leave Israel alone after they get whatever independence that is essential. Matt Gorman, a Republican strategist and former communications director for the National Republican Congressional Committee, said Republicans should use an anti-woke message in 2022 to highlight that Democrats' attention is often misplaced. A concrete effect of the woke messaging is that it shows where Democrats' priorities lay. Gorman said, while they're out there canceling Dr. Seuss in Northern Virginia, kids still aren't in school. While they're changing the name of high schools in suburban Chicago, their kids still aren't in school. Okay. I'm going to be honest right here, folks. As far as canceling Dr. Seuss goes, I've been listening to opinions from both the right and the at least center left when it comes to canceling Dr. Seuss. PSA Sitch's take on the whole canceling of Dr. Seuss and whatnot. He isn't the furthest left, but he still thinks that the whole campaigning for Dr. Seuss for these freaking, what am I trying to say? For the canceling of these obscure Dr. Seuss books, the defending of that by the right, is a little bit ridiculous, at least in PSA Sitch's opinion. And the reason why they pulled them is because they aren't making sales, because they aren't doing any gains by keeping them up on the catalog or whatever. As opposed to, yeah. So it's not really necessarily out of wokeness that they did it. I mean, other people might have wanted these Dr. Seuss books canceled because of wokeness or whatever. But nonetheless, I have to go with PSA Sitch's opinion, at least by if I was to give them the full benefit of the doubt anyways, that it's because of it seemed disadvantageous monetarily, and that they weren't even making them a profit in the first place, and thus that's why they took them down. It's not like they canceled Cat in the Hat or any of the other popular books. So, potential 2024 candidates have already begun to dial up their anti-wokeness rhetoric. Senator Ted Cruz, a Texas Republican, said last week that he would no longer accept any campaign donations from corporate political action committees because of what he described as liberal activism in corporate America. If they're going to behave as enemies of the American people, enemies of liberty, if they're going to engage in lies and willingly be weaponized as economic tools of punishment for the Democratic Party and the radicals who are doing enormous damage to the country, then I want nothing to do with that endeavor, Cruz said on Fox Business of his decision to forego the corporate cash. Okay. I mean, whatever ridiculousness that leftists want to say about Cruz there, it wasn't near as ridiculous as Mark Serrano's earlier statement that I was all like, come on, really, Serrano? I mean, leftists, I agree with Cruz, are generally want to take away some of the liberties of the American people, primarily in gun rights and private property, etc. Senator Tim Scott, a South Carolina Republican, has coined a term for and warned against what he describes as woke supremacy, or the dismissal of opposing views under the banner of liberal values. It is the quote-unquote tolerant left's intolerance for dissent. It is a progressive conception of diversity that does not include diversity of thought. It is discrimination falsely marketed as inclusion, Scott wrote in an op-ed on March 23rd. Scott used his highest profile platform to date to decry what he described as the left's use of race as a weapon in political debates. Indeed. From colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress, by doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal, Scott said while delivering the GOP's response to President Joe Biden's joint address to Congress last week. Alright, so this is somewhat tied into the whole Uncle Tim story that went on a few weeks ago. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country. It's backwards to fight discrimination with different discrimination. And it's wrong to try to use our painful past to dishonestly shut down debates in the past. Or in the present, excuse me. End of that article. And I have two more stories. I'm going to read at least one more of them before going off air. But first I'm going to get caught up a little bit more in the live chat. Door asks, you support Israel? At least verbally, I support Israel. monetarily, I don't think that they should be we should be giving foreign aid to them. And as far as any kind of military assistance that we give to them here from the United States, like get involved in their wars, that only on a very, very rare circumstance that somebody would have to think of hard to craft a rhetorical situation anyways, in order for me to get to agree with that. But anyway. Techno 1200 said, the publisher gets to make with the paper what they wish. The main issue is copyright preventing other people from publishing the books. Right. I mean, it is within Dr. Seuss's rights to, or the Dr. Seuss Foundation or whatever organization owns the books now, because Dr. Seuss is dead, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Oh, okay. Dor says, I'm from Israel a little later on. He says, free Palestine from Hamas. Okay, I gotcha. I thought, my bad. I thought you were saying free Palestine, comma, from Hamas. Like, I totally misread that. I thought you were saying, I'm from Hamas, and I say free Palestine. But no, you're saying we should free Palestine from the clutches of Hamas is what I think you're trying to say to us, Dor. Correct me if I'm wrong in that. Israel loves America. Okay, I understand. I'm sorry. I thought you were like a Palestinian sympathizer at first there, Dor, but I guess not. But yeah, I completely agree that Palestine should be freed from Hamas. How will we go about that? I don't know precisely at all. Dang, stay safe, Dor says, Reckless Trucker. Indeed. Red Feather says, they found out Dr. Seuss used to draw political advertisements when he first started as an artist. Therefore, they deemed him racist. Really? That's interesting. Anyway, so to get into this story, this is from TwinCities.com. St. Cloud man with quote-unquote Boogaloo ties faces federal firearms charges after a state capitol plot. Now, before giving any pre-commentary about this article and what my thoughts are on it, we're going to dive right into it. A self-proclaimed member of the anti-government Boogaloo Boys, who authorities said talked about his willingness to kill police and who did reconnaissance at the Minnesota Capitol ahead of a later planned armed action there, was charged Wednesday with possessing a machine gun. Interesting. I will say that there is any kind of... Okay, I gotta be careful with my words here. Anytime that violence might be somewhat arguable for by anybody, there is like a certain place for it. There is a such thing as overstepping. Like, for example, the Capitol riot within D.C. that happened in D.C. on January 6th, I thought that was overall unnecessary. Like, you had the reason why that they did that was because of the alleged cheating of Joe Biden to win the presidency, which, to sort of emphasize, I do not know, and I highly doubt, honestly, that there was enough cheating going on to... that it would have definitely swayed towards Trump if the cheating did not happen. But nonetheless, the idea of somebody cheating an election, I don't find that to be reasonable enough reason to be violently retaliating against the government. But if the government was to be taking away your rights, like particularly your gun rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution, well then, that's a different story. I'm not going to condone violence necessarily, but I'm going to say that's a bit different. And in this case, I think this falls more in the case of the former rather than the latter, as far as justification of violence in general goes. I think this guy might have slightly overstepped his action, might have acted too soon. So therefore, I cannot argue that heavily against him. I don't think that somebody should be like having machine guns like confiscated in general, despite of the Hughes Amendment of 1986 that basically banned them. in general, from general possession of from the American people. But nonetheless, I still see legally the press. Well, okay. So therefore, I'm putting aside the law when it comes to the Hughes Amendment. God, what am I trying to say here? I want to say that there is like a little bit more reasoning for this story than there was for the one story that we had looked up right here about the man who was fatally shot by police after he was refusing to hand his police officers his gun. Like, now granted, there is a possibility of there being a reasoning as to why it was done that the mainstream media, or that the media is not revealing here. But because they did not mention the reasoning at all, and it was just a red flag law, I am going to lean more towards the possibility that it was really bullshit reasoning as to why that they decided to seize the gun. Oh, you were on a no-fly list or something else along them lines. So I see this as being more unjustified than this story right here. Now, I don't want people's guns confiscated in general, but because of this particular Boogaloo boy acting too soon on violence, Buffer says red feather. Well, I'm in the green right now, it says on OBS, so it might have gone away. So I'm sorry. I'll condone protection of one's own human rights. Exactly, Reckless Trucker. I condone the protection of human rights as well. That's not necessarily to say that it always has to be violent, but nonetheless, you're not wrong. In fact, you're quite right, Reckless Trucker. Yeah, I'm seeing the buffering issues as well, says JC. Well, hopefully the audio is at least coming in smoothly. I don't know why this would be happening. Anyway, so to continue on, Michael Paul Doliger, 27 of St. Cloud, was taken into custody Wednesday on federal criminal charges, according to a news release from acting U.S. Attorney W. Anders Folk. According to the criminal complaint, the FBI began its investigation in November when a confidential informant told agents that Doliger was talking about his willingness to kill members of law enforcement. The FBI learned that Doliger had a homemade firearm suppressor and a 3D printed device to convert a semi-automatic weapon into a machine gun, according to the complaint. In addition, Doliger... Okay, so technically this would not fall under banning under the Hughes Amendment, because I don't think the Hughes Amendment covered any modifications that a person might do to a semi-automatic weapon to make it into a machine gun. It just covered banning like guns that were specifically designed to be full auto. But nonetheless, just in general, I don't, even in spite of what the law says, I don't want people to have their full auto weapons confiscated. Outside of law, I still say that they have the right to it in general. But that's not really applying to this story, because the only reason why I'm saying that I understand as to why they confiscated the weapons in this case is because the guy was making threats of violence before there be like any reasonableness for him to be doing any such action. Just saying. In addition, Doliger also possessed body armor. I mean, why? An AR-15 style assault rifle with a folding stock and loaded magazines. The complaint said Doliger had told the informant that his home had portholes to make a stand if law enforcement confronted him. The FBI's investigation revealed that on December 12th, Doliger attended a Stop the Steal rally of Donald Trump supporters at the Capitol in St. Paul to conduct surveillance. The complaint said he scouted law enforcement numbers. Scouted law enforcement numbers. Are you sure you did not mean to spell members? Overwatch positions for the Boogaloo boys, quick reaction forces, and which streets were blocked by law enforcement. Or scouted law enforcement. They probably meant to say numbers, and I'm just being autistic. After the reconnaissance mission at which he filmed, Gallagher shared the video with the confidential informant. The complaint states that Gallagher told the informant he was preparing to defend another rally at the Capitol on January 17th that one followed the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol by a pro-Trump mob as Congress met to certify Joe Biden's presidential election. I mean, defending, is there anything really wrong with merely defending a rally? I mean, what if Antifa was to show up and wanted to start shit? Not the police necessarily, not law enforcement necessarily, but any other kind of party that hates Proud Boys, Trump supporters, and so forth, and would have a self-assured incentive as to why that they would want to conduct violence. What's the matter of the guy wanting to defend the protests from those types of actors? Feather, you still getting the buffer issues? Asks JC Armitage. I'm still in the green right now on OBS. Still green, still green, still green. Alright, continuing on though. Gallagher told the informant he wanted to commit suicide by cop and would not wear a bulletproof vest, according to the complaint. He said he would go out fighting and go hunt some pig. Eventually, the plans for January 17 were called off because of fears the group had been compromised by an informant. On January 10, the informant had asked Gallagher about obtaining a machine gun converter. On February 3rd, Gallagher gave the informant 2 of the devices. Gallagher's next court appearance is Friday. His court-appointed attorney Robert Richmond told the Associated Press in an email Wednesday evening that he had not yet met his client and knows nothing about the case. End of that article. So, yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I can understand as to why that the guy is being arrested and whatnot. But on the other hand, I don't like the precedent that's being set up here. It's like they are, you just have another dangerous precedent of the government feeling justified to arrest anybody who is like on the right because of this guy overreacting and overstepping. I think that's about all that I'm going to read today because it is getting kind of late, mostly because I started kind of late. It's getting kind of late for a work day, let me put it that way. If this were a weekend, I would probably carry on, but no. So, I'm going to probably save this story. Well, actually, no, it's a super short one. You know what? Screw it. I'll read it anyways. 3lstories.com. This was shared in my Discord server, talking about as to be an example of how that libertarians, you know, it's an anecdotal example making the case for libertarianism. Frustrated man builds park stairs for $550 after city estimates $65,000, then the city destroys it. Within Tom Riley Park in West Toronto, citizens of all ages should be able to enjoy a beautiful public garden. However, for the community's senior citizens, getting into the garden is often impossible due to the fact that there is no easy access to it. There's only one hill leading down into the garden through the park, and for senior citizens, going down the hill poses serious risks. Frustrated by the authorities' lack of initiative to fix this problem, local senior Addy Assel, am I reading that right? I mean, it almost sounds like I'm saying asshole, but it's spelled like A-S-T-L, so I'm guessing it's pronounced Assel or Astel. I don't know. Local senior Addy Astel reached out to one of the members of the city. A simple set of stairs would have been enough to fix this problem and make the area safer for senior citizens. However, Addy was told that the project to install the stairs would cost anywhere from $65,000 to $150,000, and that such an expense is simply not within the city's budget. So the man decided to take matters into his own hand. Using the skills and expertise he's acquired as a mechanic, the man was able to build the stairs for $550. But the city council wasn't too happy about his initiative and tore the stairs down. But that's not how things ended up. Find out what happened next by watching the video below. You know what? Let's go ahead and watch it. Why not?
Safety hazard or a common sense solution? A retiree in the neighborhood near Tom Riley Park built these stairs after the city said it would cost taxpayers more than $65,000 for a similar set. CTV's Colin DeMello joins us in Etobicoke. So Colin, this morning, word was those stairs have to come down. Has that changed?
Well, the city is now taking a few steps, Ken, towards a compromise. They want to now shore up the staircase without spending as much money as possible to ensure that the staircase is safe without the city having to pay.
Come on. Now I'm having buffer issues, y'all, with the video.
Shore up the staircase without spending as much money as possible to ensure that the staircase is safe without the city having to.
Dang it.
Safety
I have a feeling that I'm going to have more luck if I go watching this on.
hazard or a common sense solution. A retiree in the neighborhood.
Okay, watch on YouTube. We're going to go that way, folks. Watching it on YouTube.
Retiree in the neighborhood near Tom Riley Park.
Case without spending as much money as possible to ensure that the staircase is safe without the city having to pay tens of thousands of dollars. It's a popular shortcut to get to a popular Etobicoke park.
Kids use it. The kids coming down to play soccer. People on bikes. We see lots of seniors.
But before these
Safety
steps were
hazard or a
built,
common sense
residents had to
solution.
navigate.
A retiree in the neighborhood near.
That video accidentally played on me, so I had two videos playing for a second there. Let me rewind. Technical difficulties, y'all. Okay, so it's buffering better on the actual YouTube website here, so that's good.
People on bikes. We see lots of seniors.
But before these steps were built, residents had to navigate a small hill with a few stones. Many complained it was dangerous.
We had one of our garden members come down. She fell and broke her wrist.
When the community asked how much it would cost to build a staircase, the response they got was surprising. $65,000 to $150,000 for just 8 steps.
I thought they were going to put escalators in here or something.
So AntiAsian collected money and built his own staircase for $550.
There was a person around here, which is kind of a homeless person. I engaged him to help me because I'm 73 years old, can't do this much anymore. So within 14 hours, we built the steps.
City inspectors were recently called in, and Astle was told his stairs were unsafe, that the railing is unstable, the incline is uneven, and that there's no foundation. We showed the stairs to a home improvement contractor.
For an amateur who doesn't do this for a living, I think it's pretty decent looking.
And people using the staircase say they don't have a problem with it.
Very comfortable. My daughter needs a new door. You want a job? My gosh, I think it's marvelous.
The local city councilor agrees that the stairs won't stand the test of time, but he says it's not about the product, but the point.
You could build a set of stairs that would last a test of time, and you could go to the private sector and they probably could design it for you for $5,000 or $10,000. This is just basically showing you what's possible.
While the city works on a solution, the couple is working on putting up a sign.
Just a warning, it's there for you to use. However, it's on your own.
All the while standing up to the city over a staircase. Mayor John Tory says a staircase such as this one is not a city priority, especially one with a $65,000 price tag and above, because there is a walkway and a pathway accessing this park less than 200 feet away. He also has this message for residents. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean that you can just go to the hardware store and build whatever you want, wherever you want. Reporting live, I'm Colin DeMello. Zerata, over to you.
Yeah, okay, so that is officially the end of this story, the end of this article right here, folks. And if I was to, be fair to people, the stairs doesn't seem to be, it doesn't seem to be built, you look behind the guy, it doesn't seem to be built on anything that solid. It's just built in some dirt, into the mud. So there is potential that the rain could wash away that mud, and so therefore the foundation, that being the dirt, could degrade and make the stairs lose the foundation so that they fall apart a lot easier. So one thing that would have been a very good improvement is if they laid down some amount of concrete to help put a more sturdy foundation. But at the same time, I gotta ask, $65,000, really? That just seems overblown. The most that I could like imagine this costing is like $2,000. Although this is like a story from 2017, so maybe adjusting for inflation nowadays it would be more than $2,000. But nonetheless, it can't be like an extra over $64,000 just to lay down a foundation for the stairs. I mean, it's at least a nice gesture. I mean, I like the idea that you have private citizens trying to take initiatives into their own hand at least. And again, I think they should lay down a concrete foundation to like really stick it to the man as opposed to this stuff. But nonetheless, yeah. I refreshed. It's better now, says Red Feather. But I think that's all that I got to say about the subjects right now, folks. And I will put the links to all these articles in the description box below when I go off air here in a little bit. But Gooberment is here to help people, helping by destroying the product of any competition, says JC Armitage. Excuse me, right? Is someone in your house playing Roblox? LOL, it eats Wi-Fi. Oh, well, I don't live in a house, Red Feather. I live in an apartment by myself. Nobody is using the my own internet connection, my own Wi-Fi, except for me. Oh yeah, because only the state can ensure safe products. So says the same state, says JC Armitage. Yep. Red Feather says, yeah, no one has ever been injured on state-built structures. Precisely, Red Feather. JC also says, I find it hilarious that the state bitches about unsafe staircase when they can't even maintain roads, despite how much money they steal from us. Precisely. $65,000, yeah, that's definitely a scam on the state's part. Yup. It would cost, like, well more than $550 in order to build the stairs and to get a more solid foundation than just plain old dirt. But it should not cost $65,000. There's a whole lot of bureaucracy getting in the way there, apparently. A whole lot of state procedures and whatnot. Unnecessary state procedures. Techno 1200 says, yes, I know, my country sucks. Where do you live in again, Techno, if you don't mind saying? Because I think I recall you saying that you do not live in the U.S., but if you don't feel like answering, then by all means don't, but nonetheless. Red Feather says, how did they do this project without permits? LOL. Techno said it in the live chat. He says Canada. Okay. Techno 1200 also says, the reason why they were able to do it was because it cost the government too much time and money to build a freaking staircase. Always over budget and over time. Precisely. And that's all that I have to say about today's episode of Strike Force. I got to get to bed so that I can get enough sleep to wake up early enough and get to the gym on a decent time, and then get to work. So, if you all like this episode of Strike Force, don't forget to hit the like button down below. And don't forget to leave a comment down below if you're like reading this or watching this episode in post to see how that you think I could do better. Tell me how you thought I did in my coverage of these different stories, especially on the opening there when I was like doing it mostly off the fly to talk about the Israel versus Hamas thing. And then the Hill admitting to coronavirus coming from a Chinese lab and that sort of stuff. How do you think I did that effectively? And if you want to be a patron of mine, my Patreon is linked down below. If this is your first time running across my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below. And stay tuned for next episode, I guess, y'all. Have a good night. God bless. Thank you and good night.